It's perfect time to talk about fashion. What is fashion? Fashion is the ultimate force of time. If you try to define fashion by saying it's clothes, it's trends, or something like that, please be aware that it's really wrong. Fashion and fashion industry are two different terms, and we should recognize when we talk about fashion that fashion and fashion industry are not the same. It is easy to say fashion when we talk about fashion industry because it's all around us. Everybody is using that term fashion. But it's a shame that so many people do not think about what they are talking about and they use it wrongly. So they use fashion when probably in most magazines, in most articles, it is correct to use fashion industry in these contexts. Let's try to understand what fashion industry is. The easiest way to define fashion industry is by defining it with the help of capitalism. Theories connect fashion to capitalism, but I think it's so wrong to connect these two terms. When we can connect fashion industry to capitalism, then it makes much more sense. Fashion industry in the age of capitalism is the most significant form of fashion in 3D reality. Studying fashion in the age of capitalism is like studying a drop of ocean and the whole ocean. That drop is not the ocean, but ocean is all the drops. So the drop is actually fashion industry in the ocean of fashion. It's ridiculous, I know. Please note that fashion in capitalism tells us that fashion is not a product of capitalism, but more of a capitalism is a product of fashion. Fashion cannot be a part of capitalism and be strictly dependent on capitalism and at the same time exist without capitalism. If we try to define fashion only by connecting it to Western world and Western capitalism, then we exclude every possibility of fashion existence in any other forms other than capitalism. So what happens then? For example, right now, and I would say the whole 2020, is fashion existing right now, or is it just fashion industry that is affected? By no means should we ever think that fashion is not existing in situations when only fashion industry is affected, because you cannot destroy fashion. Fashion is immortal. Fashion is always there. Fashion is just like time. It's hard to define time also, but if you try to imagine time, of course not time on your watch, if you try to imagine time and it's something that is so consistent and you cannot destroy it, it's always there, and at the same time it does not exist at all, then you get a clue what fashion could be. Not fashion industry, but fashion. So, talking about fashion and time, when did it start? It started exactly when time started. It's not something that was that's man-made, I would say. On this planet, fashion industry is man-made, but fashion is not a man-made thing. It's not something you can go and say, okay, now it exists and now it doesn't exist. the existence of fashion in time is just as strong as the existence of time in our reality. So, for example, if we take some period of our perception of time, for example, 1 year without fashion industry, it's impossible for things to happen without fashion. But if we take 1 year without fashion industry as the main form of fashion in our reality, then we will have a time without a huge amount of fashion manifestation. What will happen then? I think, and it's most definitely true, that when fashion industry starts again, it will not start from where it ended, but it will start from the point of time it started. It will start producing goods, and it will start producing fashion artifacts and fashion just the way it would be perfect for that time. In fashion, you cannot go back. You can take inspiration from the past, but something you create today in fashion industry, it cannot be a result of fashion from 10 years ago. It can look like a fashion from 10 years ago, but it's never going to be fashion from 10 years ago. It's going to be a fashion of that exact moment. Of course, when I'm talking about creating fashion, please be aware that many things are not fashion. I'm talking about true fashion and fashion design, and it's a huge difference. It's a huge difference to see fashion from true fashion designers and fashion from people who make clothes. I will make more content about fashion and time, and I will show you images about fashion and time, so you can see it. But if you want to imagine it, imagine fashion as something, a force that is always traveling along with the path of time. It's not ever going to be stopped. It cannot be destroyed, and most certainly it cannot be invented. It cannot be man-made in some part of human history. So fashion did not start in Italy in 15th century. Fashion did not start when first dressmakers were there. They were just starting fashion industry. And then we have a fantastic example of how fashion changes only by looking at fashion industry changes. Of course, fashion is as a force of time, it is always going to be affected by social changes and social challenges. And fashion industry will represent it perfectly. Time simply is, just like fashion. Fashion simply is. Now I will discuss, can fashion die? Will it end, and how will it end? And is it even possible to end fashion? Just to put some context to the future of fashion and probably fashion industry, it's important to remind ourselves that fashion cannot be destroyed and fashion cannot be ended. This is the number one thing. But fashion has its own path. Fashion is not just there without going anywhere. The reason it cannot be destroyed, fashion looks for the ultimate truth. Try to look at fashion like it's an organism. Try to look at it like it's a being. And as we know, every alive being is always trying to survive. It will always fight until the last moment to be safe and to survive. If you ask yourself why fashion cannot be destroyed, please be aware that fashion cannot be destroyed because it has been realized in its absolute truth in simulacrum. Simulacrum is a theory from Baudrillard that says that every copy is the new truth. We do not have copies anymore in virtuality. We have new truths. As we know, fashion already, this whole fashion world, including fashion industry, already exists as a separate world in our reality. It already has its own rhythm. It already has its own purpose. It's world by itself. And if you do not know how this world functions, then you think that fashion is probably a dress on the red carpet. And it's really pity. I mean, fashion is a whole world that includes fashion industry. It's really important to understand that fashion is not dead. Fashion is here, but fashion industry is trying to survive right now. So knowing that fashion already exists as a separate world, fashion made this huge tension around us. It created this uncomfortable tension in the world, like it would explode any moment. And it was happening before today's situation in the world, before this P-fashion. And it almost exploded. And of course, if you follow fashion, you will always understand that there are more changes coming or that there are no changes coming. When fashion fully moves into the simulacrum, it's going to absolutely be realized in its truth, and the tension that was created by the existence of fashion as a separate world in our reality will be gone. And that happened right now. I mean, it's already happening. So if you look at it, there is no more tension. People do not want, I mean, of course there are people that want, but I'm talking about mass awareness of consumers of fashion, that people are not attracted to, I don't know, a few thousand euros bags anymore. It's not status symbol anymore. It became almost laughable if people buy a bag that costs, I don't know, 6,000 or 7,000 euros. It became even stupid. People are not attracted to fashion as they used to be, because it built this huge tension inside the world of fashion, and it spread its tension to our world, and we had really fast moving world where new collections were coming almost every single week, if not a day. When the tension stops, fashion becomes the ultimate truth. And right now it's already happening. So the future of fashion is fashion. Think about it. The future of fashion is fashion. The future of fashion industry is fashion. Then we can say fashion when we mean fashion industry. Fashion is going to be absolutely realized in our reality. People will finally understand the power of fashion and the way it works. I'm not saying they will understand it fully, of course not, but people will find a way for fashion to be fashion. It will live as fashion, not separated, but the ultimate future of fashion is that everything is fashion. Reducing fashion to fashion industry only is absurd. A way needs to be found to reduce fashion industry to fashion. And finally, from the world where fashion flickered to the world that flickers. Thanks, bye.